When 12-year-old Ethan Miller knocked on that old wooden door, he only wanted a glass of water. His clothes were dusty, his shoes worn out, and his voice soft from exhaustion. But the moment the door opened and Margaret Collins saw his face, the glass slipped from her trembling hand and shattered on the floor. Her knees gave out and tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Oh my God, how is this possible?" That knock wasn't just a child asking for water. It was the sound of her past returning after 13 long years of grief. If the story touched your heart, show your love, like, share, and comment your thoughts on my channel Heartbreaking and Connecting Story. Margaret Collins had lived alone for most of her life. Her small house sat on the edge of a beautiful place, a quiet town where everyone knew each other's names and everyone knew Margaret's story. She was the woman who had lost her baby in a tragic car accident over a decade ago. Some said she never recovered. Others whispered that she still set a place for him at the dinner table every night. They weren't wrong. Every morning she sat by the window sipping tea, staring at the dusty road that led past her house, as if waiting for someone to come back. Life had turned into a quiet echo of memories she couldn't let go of. That afternoon was no different. The sun hung low, and the wind carried the scent of pine and old memories. Margaret was mending a torn sleeve when she heard a faint knock on the door. It was gentle, hesitant, almost apologetic. She frowned, wiping her hands on her apron, and walked to the door. When she opened it, a young boy stood there. His hair was messy, his face smudged with dirt, and his clothes were too thin for the chilly wind. But what struck her most were his eyes, deep gray with a touch of blue. The exact same eyes she had seen every day in her framed photograph of her lost son, Henry. "Mom, may I please have some water?" The boy asked softly, clutching the strap of his torn backpack. For a second, Margaret couldn't move. Her heart felt like it had stopped. She blinked rapidly, trying to steady herself. "Water," she repeated, her voice trembling. The boy nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I was walking from the bus stop to the orphanage down the road. I got tired." Margaret motioned for him to come in. "Of course, sweetheart. Come in, sit down. You look exhausted." He stepped inside timidly, his shoes leaving small dusty prints on the wooden floor. She poured him a glass of cold water and handed it to him, her hands shaking slightly. As he drank, she couldn't stop staring. The shape of his nose, the way he rubbed the back of his neck when nervous. Every tiny gesture mirrored Henry. It was impossible. And yet she felt an ache in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. "What's your name, dear?" she finally asked. "Ethan," he said between sips. "Ethan Miller," her breath caught. "Miller," she whispered. That was her maiden name before she married. "Yes, ma'am. My mom said that's my real last name before I was adopted, but I don't remember her. She passed away when I was a baby." Margaret's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Tears filled her eyes as she fell to her knees, covering her mouth with both hands. Ethan rushed toward her. I am sorry, did I?" No, it's not you," she cried softly. You just look so much like someone I lost." Ethan crouched beside her, his small hand hesitantly touching her arm. "I didn't mean to make you sad." She wiped her tears and forced a smile. "You didn't, sweetheart. You reminded me that love never really leaves us." She led him to the living room and gave him a sandwich. He ate slowly, politely, as if afraid to take too much. When she asked where he lived, he told her he stayed at Maplewood Orphanage. Sometimes, Ethan said, "I dream about a woman singing. She has soft hands and she calls me my Henry." I don't know why I dreamed that. Margaret froze, her world tilted. The song he described, "You Are My Sunshine," was the lullaby she used to sing every night to her baby boy, Henry Collins. Her hands trembled as she reached for the old photograph on the mantel. A picture of her and her late husband holding their newborn son. She placed it beside Ethan. "Do you see anything familiar in this picture?" she whispered. Ethan studied it closely. His eyes widened. That's the lady from my dreams," he said in awe. And the baby, that's me. Margaret's tears streamed uncontrollably. Ethan, my darling boy, she whispered. You're Henry. You're my son. He looked confused. But they told me my family died in an accident. She nodded through tears. There was an accident. Your father didn't make it. And they told me you didn't either. They said your body was never found. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Heavy, trembling silence. Then Ethan slowly reached forward, wrapping his small arms around her. I think I found you again, he said softly. Margaret broke down, holding him as if she would never let go. 13 years of pain dissolved in that single embrace. The walls that had heard nothing but grief finally echoed with life again. Later that evening, they sat on the porch together. Ethan told her how he had bounced from one foster home to another, never knowing where he truly belonged. Each time someone tried to adopt him, something inside him hesitated as if waiting for someone else. Margaret listened, her hand never leaving his. She called the orphanage, voice trembling with both fear and hope, explaining everything. They promised to look into his records. Days passed and DNA tests confirmed what her heart already knew. Ethan was indeed her long-lost son, Henry Collins. The day they got the results, Margaret stood outside her house, the same spot where he had knocked on her door. Ethan stood beside her, smiling shyly, holding her hand tightly. You know, she said, smiling through tears. When you first knocked that day, I thought it was just another lonely afternoon, but it wasn't. It was the day God gave me my reason to live again. Ethan looked up at her, eyes bright. I think maybe he gave me water that day, too, he said. Not the kind you drink, the kind that fills your heart. Margaret laughed softly, pulling him close. Oh, my sweet boy, you filled mine, too. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with golden hues, wrapping mother and son in a glow of warmth and second chances. For the first time in 13 years, Margaret set 2 plates at the dinner table, and this time both were filled. That night, as she tucked him into bed, she hummed the old lullaby. Ethan smiled sleepily. I knew I'd find you one day, he whispered. Margaret brushed his hair gently and kissed his forehead, and I knew I'd hear that knock again. The one that brings life back to my heart. Outside the quiet town slept peacefully. But inside that little house on Maplewood Road, 2 broken souls had finally found home again. All because a thirsty boy had knocked on the right door. Sometimes the smallest acts, a knock, a question, a drink of water, are not coincidences. They are divine threads reconnecting souls that were never meant to be apart. Love never dies, it just finds its way home when the time is right.